So today I'm excited to be checking out a few new Parfums Vintage fragrances. Summer is in full effect and they've been kicking these things out. Summer is in full swing and they've really been pushing these new fragrances out, which is always great to see. It's a bit hard to keep up with at times, so I'm going to cover a few of them here all together in this video. In my opinion, these are kind of my favorites of what they've been putting out here recently. I still have some more I'm going to cover in another video, but I think these three right here are kind of the heavy hitters and the ones that are more or less going to be getting the most attention and the most talk about. You hear chatter on, people in the Facebook groups asking which ones they should buy, which ones they shouldn't. These are probably the main three that are going to be talked about the most, so I figured I'd go ahead and get this video out first, covering these three new ones that are more likely than not going to be pretty popular. We have Rush of Unicorns Intense. Very excited about this one. And then we have Intense the One right here. Look at that nice colored juice. And then we have Emperor Cologne Intense. So just to give you a quick rundown on what all of these are, this one, Emperor Cologne Intense, is their take on Aventus Cologne. We've been waiting for this one for a while. I know that Damien was taking some time to really perfect the scent before pushing it out. Of course, they weren't the first to put out their Aventus Cologne interpretation, but they weren't also the first to put out their Aventus interpretations either. And I mean, look at how they kind of cornered the market in making some of the best quality ones. So I'm finally excited to have Emperor Cologne Intense in my possession to give my thoughts on it. Up next, we have Intense the One right here. This is going to be a more refined version of Pineapple Vintage Intense. They're basically creating a more higher impact version of the scent, increasing the top notes, increasing the concentration of all of the ingredients used. And what you'll notice when you spray this one on your skin is it has a lot more punch, kind of hits you in the face a lot more. You can just tell that the notes kind of stand out and punch through more so than some of the other versions. This one's also got a bit more of like a creaminess to it, which I really like as well. And last one we're going to be talking about today is Rush of Unicorns Intense. So Rush of Unicorns is their take on Creed Millesime Imperial, more specifically the older batches. A lot of these Creed fragrances go through reformulations, right? That's why we have all of the different Aventus inspirations. And Millesime Imperial was one that was hit pretty hard. I mean, if you smell some 2010, 2011 batches of Millesime Imperial and then smell some of the recent batches, there's a big difference. So Rush of Unicorns kind of targets those older batches of Millesime Imperial. I covered Rush of Unicorns back when it first came out on my channel a couple years ago. I believe it was like one of the first fragrances that they sent to me, which was pretty cool. So now finally they're releasing an intense version, which I've been awaiting. I love Rush of Unicorns. This is one of their most popular releases, and it's just an incredible scent, especially for the summertime like we're in right now. So let's go and cover all these into some detail. Let's go and start off with Emperor Cologne Intense. So this is, of course, the intense version, right? That's what I just said. They also have the original version. Now, there's going to be a bit of a difference in between the two. The original Emperor Cologne is going to develop basically exactly like Aventus Cologne. It's going to have the same opening, which fades off pretty quickly, going into the mid and then into the dry down where it kind of spices up a little bit, kind of like with the real Aventus Cologne. I mean, a lot of us agree that the opening of Aventus Cologne smells great, but then it wears off pretty quickly, right? So the original Emperor Cologne is going to model exactly after that development. So for those of you who like how Aventus Cologne develops and you wouldn't change a thing, you would want to go for Emperor Cologne. However, Emperor Cologne Intense develops a bit differently. This one basically kind of extends out that nice opening. It layers some of the top notes into the mid as well, so that way it gives you a bit more spice and a bit more variety as the fragrance develops. Kind of once you get towards the mid of Aventus Cologne, just the original, you kind of get into this weird spot where it's mostly just bergamot among a few of the other notes, and it just kind of falls flat. But with the intense version, they kind of work to layer some of the top over the mid as it develops, and that way, it kind of extends out the opening, and then you get into the dry down where it does get a little bit better than the faded off opening of the original Aventus Cologne. So my preference is going to be the intense, just because I like how the opening and the mid smells more so than how the original develops. Now, one of the other things that you'll find with Aventus Cologne is the performance on that one isn't going to be anything to write home about. It just doesn't have the strength like the original Aventus has. However, after my testing with Emperor Cologne Intense, I find that this one has really good performance, both longevity and projection. Longevity, I've been looking at about 9.5 hours, at which point, in some situations, I will go a little bit anosmic to it, so more likely than not, it's probably lasting longer past that, but I just kind of start to go nose blind. My girlfriend will start to go nose blind because I'm going to be near her most of the time, so it's kind of one of those things where more likely than not, it's still lasting longer than that. That's just kind of how these Aventus type of fragrances work on my skin. You'll also find with a lot of these that once it starts to wear off and you think it's kind of dying out, if you go into some heat, it'll kind of open it back up. So I've had this happen, for example, the next day, I'll get into the shower, the warm water and the kind of steam, hotness of the shower will kind of revive the scent and kind of amp it back up. So that's one thing you'll notice. You've been inside all day, it kind of starts to die off. You go outside when it's really hot, it'll kind of revive. So that's another thing that will kind of happen with these. Projection on this one is going to be honestly pretty solid. It's one that will leave a nice trail in the air. When you walk by or you walk through a room, it'll kind of stay in that room, and you walk back in there, you can smell it. So it leaves a really nice trail. Moving up next, we're going to go ahead and talk about Rush of Unicorns Intense. I'm really excited about this one, guys. As you know, I love Rush of Unicorns. For summertime, just a great fragrance to have, especially when it's super hot outside. You have something like this that just smells so pleasant. And this fragrance, oh, does it smell incredible. I love it. You get this nice salty, watermelon-y type of thing going on. That's kind of what these fragrances are known for. The newer batches of Millésime Imperial just don't quite have the same magic as compared to these older batches, or the Rush of Unicorns, which is targeting these older batches. It's got somewhat of a warm and fuzzy sweetness, but also a lot of citrus, fresh muskiness. So it's kind of one of those weird things where when you smell it, it almost has like the texture of being a sweet fragrance like for fall and winter, but the actual smell itself and how it's composed, it's definitely composed to be a warm weather summer fragrance. It's just, there's something about it, the way the musk is, the way the melon saltiness is, kind of the aquaticness, and just the way all the other citrus combines. It just is kind of fuzzy, and it just smells so good and so pleasing. Just like with Emperor Cologne Intense, Rush of Unicorns Intense focuses more on the top notes. He's increased them, and they kind of roll off into the mid as well, at least in my experience developing on my skin. And you can tell that it does have just a lot more punch and a lot more impact compared to the original Rush of Unicorns. What I like about these intense versions of the fragrances that they put out is that they really simply are just a bit of an improvement over what was out first. So it kind of gives you a choice. Maybe you like the regular better than the intense, you have that choice. But for a lot of people, the intense versions of these fragrances really help to kind of give everyone a choice of what they want and what they prefer. And in this situation, the intense version knocks it out of the park for me. Of course, I love the original Rush of Unicorns, but the intense is probably going to be what I'm reaching for most. I just love the increased top notes of this fragrance, the way it develops into the mid and dry down. And I also love the performance, which we'll go ahead and talk about now. Longevity on my skin here recently with this one, about 8 hours, 8 to 8.5 hours, sometimes pushing 9, just kind of depending on the weather, depending on really how much I'm sweating. I've been testing a lot of these while I've been outside, so your mileage may vary on that. Just like with performance in general, something you got to test for yourself, and it's something that can vary drastically from person to person, and even on your own skin. Sometimes it'll be less, sometimes it'll be more. For me, about 8.5 to 9 hours, which is really good for a fresh fragrance, and much better than Millésime Imperial by Creed. Projection is going to be about soft to moderate, kind of in between those two. It's not going to project out like something like Emperor Cologne would, where it really fills up a room and sticks in the air. It does push out and it will get you noticed, but it doesn't have almost that room filling projection like their Aventus alternative. So it's something to keep in mind, but still, it does leave a nice scent trail behind you and it will project out and turn some heads. I also will say this is 100% a unisex fragrance, just like Millésime Imperial is by Creed. So if you're a woman out there, or if you are, a guy and you're wanting to buy this and, you can share it with your girlfriend, that sort of thing, it'll work on anyone's skin. I mean, it just smells so good. It smells like an expensive, high-end summer fragrance is the best way to put it. I know some people said it kind of smells like liquid gold, and that's like a perfect way to put it as well. Rush of Unicorns Intense by Parfums Vintage. This one is another winner and a fantastic summer scent. Last up, we're going to be talking about Intense the One. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I kind of gave you a rundown on this one. Higher impact top notes, a bit more of a creaminess throughout the mid and base, and even in the opening. And man, does it smell beautiful. I love Intense the One. It's one of those things where it kind of reminds me a little bit of Pineapple Vintage Intense Gold, just a little bit, because of that creaminess that it has. But this one doesn't quite have the same like syrupiness that Intense Gold has. Really, between the two, it's going to be a toss-up. Here recently, I've really been in loving Intense the One. It's one of those things where it's just kind of a sweeter, heavier, higher impact, more punchy version of Aventus is really the best way to put it. Performance on this one is going to be crazy as well. Just like with all of their interpretations, I've never had an issue with performance. This one, 9-10 plus hours, at which point I'm anosmic to it, and it's really just hard to tell at that point. Projection is going to be pretty close to a room filler when you go with 3 to 4 sprays. It will really fill up a room, and it will leave a nice trail and linger in the air for quite a while. I mean, when you look at the color of this stuff, it may not show up, with this background and everything. I might not even be focusing, but it's dark stuff. I mean, against the background of the trees, it may be hard to see, but it's dark stuff. So kind of goes to show you just how potent this stuff really is. So guys, I think that's pretty much going to be it for me. That is my thoughts on a few of the new Parfums Vintage fragrances. Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, they've been cranking these puppies out. Usually around kind of spring/summer is when they really ramp up and get out some of these releases. So I just wanted to cover these 3, which I think are going to be kind of the most popular and get the most chatter. Again, there are quite a few more that I have that I want to cover in some other videos. I've talked a little bit about Euphony Intense, which is their take on Creed Irolfa. Love Creed Irolfa, love Euphony Intense. I featured that in my summer niche fragrances video, I believe. I'll probably want to do a full review on that one. I've got Maverick. I've got a few others that need some attention, so I will get to them. But again, these are kind of the main 3 that I think are going to be the most interesting to you guys. So hopefully this video helped you out. If you wanted to know about some of the new releases, this video should do it for you. Make sure you stay tuned for more and go check out their website where you can pick these up. That's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow night with another one. Take care.